Okay, Mac, this is like, those cooking competitions where hands off, like, the bell's rung. We've been feverishly working on this deck up until the last couple of minutes. Welcome to Mac and our presentation about the best of Microsoft Build. The two of us got a chance to go to Seattle last week and went to a ton of sessions, met a lot of people, did a bunch of labs, took some certs, and we've got 59 minutes to get through 4 days of content. And I don't think we're going to make it through the deck. Mac, do you think we're going to make it through? So,
Absolutely not.
okay. So to make it even worse and harder on us, I'm going to ask, everybody on the call, go ahead and post the questions in here. Amy's going to help moderate, and we'll see if we can answer some of your questions. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Brian Hayden. I'm a solution architect here at Concurrency. And Mac, introduce yourself real quick. We don't have time for a long one.
I'm Matt Kravitz. I'm a senior software engineer at Concurrency, and let's get to the meat.
All right. So first things first, if you did not get a chance to go through the sessions and want a quick study guide, the Book of News is the best resource for you to go to get like a 50,000 foot, just informational. This is what it is. This is why it's important. And it's a list of all the announcements that were made at Microsoft Build. And so I've got the QR code up there if you want to take a picture or snap it. But definitely a huge resource. I even went through it over the weekend just to kind of refresh my memory. What did I forget? And so use that resource. Perfect. I'm going to give you my key takeaways. I had a bunch of posts, maybe some blog posts coming up on this, but my key takeaways is, first and foremost, I didn't find any announcements that I thought were like unexpected or a big leap. They were things that I would have projected that would be coming, through the frameworks and through the capabilities, but that they got there this fast to me was the biggest surprise from Microsoft Build. What they were announcing, things that you can actually play with and touch today, was absolutely fantastic. And so what it's going to be like next year when I go to Build for in 2026, I just can't even think about it. I just can't even imagine it. But the other thing that was really clear to me is that the agent revolution is here. Microsoft is all in on the semantic kernel stack. All of their tools are being built on it. They are enabling all the prominent agent protocols, open source, and so we need to start focusing on how to manage agents in our work life, in our workloads, in order to make us more effective and efficient developers and even frontline workers. And then the last thing that was my key takeaway is that there is a lot of learning to go around. There is no way we can all keep up with it. And I think we owe it to ourselves not only to dedicate time in our day-to-day routine to learn, but also to help others that are struggling to, find those resources, find some of the things that are important for your organization. And so share the knowledge, get involved in user communities, and just be, a good partner to your coworkers. My favorite highlights around the technology, if I get into like more of the technical things, I think local foundry and being able to do development with AI LLMs on your devices is going to be the single biggest thing that came out of Build. The cost, we'll just get more into it a little bit later, but app modernization, I have a lot of customers that are struggling with getting their legacy code up to snuff. The tooling is almost there. We're seeing it in GitHub Copilot, the agent mode. We're seeing it in some of the tools that are there. Semantic kernel I mentioned is definitely a pivotal part of the ecosystem. They're using it in Logic apps. They're using it in Copilot, Copilot Studio. Like it's the base layer. And if you want to build modular systems that are going to plug into the Microsoft ecosystem, definitely leverage semantic kernel. And then the last point that I wanted to make is that you're going to see throughout this that low code and pro code are becoming really close knit partners. There's a couple of slides here where I'm talking about Copilot Studio, being able to develop those, which is it's a low-code platform, but you can actually build it in Visual Studio, or you can bring Python skills into play as well. So Mac, what's your key takeaways?
Yeah, I have plenty. This is my first build. So once I got through like the just the absolute craziness of like, oh my God, where do I go? I ended up talking to Brian. I'm like, okay, there's 40 sessions today and 4 time slots. What do I do? And I ended up going to to a lot of the non-recorded technical labs. I spent a lot of time in those where some of the stuff that Brian's talking about, like semantic kernel, I got to play hands-on. There is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The big focus takeaways are that GitHub Copilot is not a pair programmer; it is a peer programmer. We've seen evidence of that. It was amazing to see things that we were exposed to, literally solving or bringing to resolution the 6 or 5 or 6 tickets all within 30 minutes time. As a developer, that tool and that the power of GitHub Copilot in is just infinite. Um, One thing that's a little bit more, obviously, how we're going to do things and how we're going to develop is going to change, but the way that we're going to develop from a project perspective is also significantly going to change. GitHub and Azure DevOps in an integrated fashion is probably going to be the future, just based on how much they've invested in GitHub and what we're seeing with how much Copilot has a play in GitHub, and then the integration of tickets or user stories within ADO straight to GitHub. Big change there that I think it will impact projects. Um, get familiar with Azure AI Foundry. Whether it's gonna be the one-stop shop for everything AI, and if you're picking it up, everything's gonna be AI. So you better get familiar with Azure AI Foundry, or you'll be in trouble. I used to think that I was reading about MCP and AI, and I was like, oh my God, how do you do this? And it has to be like this crazy secret sauce. And then I got to actually build an MCP server in an Azure function and use that agent that I just built inside of Copilot or GitHub Copilot. I got it to do something for me within code. I was extremely impressed how easy it was, and I have some code that I can share to with the team or with everybody here to just display how that works. I was extremely impressed how easy it is. It's not secret sauce like we all think it is. It's very straightforward. And then there's a lot of improved AI security and permissions aspects on the horizon. Things we'll talk about today. But I got to play with some Python libraries that works that Microsoft is releasing that ultimately allows us to test for safety and violence prevention and a few other things. So that was really cool. And then the last thing I'll say, if you have been following a product, whether it's Power BI, Fabric, whatever, look at the roadmap again. What I noticed is the roadmap's completely revamped on day one of build. We had our team members run into that, but the roadmaps are different. They're new. They're revamped. So please take a look and take a look there. So I'll hand it back to you, Brian.
All right, so one of the things that I said was agents are here to stay. So not only do you have your typical agent patterns that we've been talking about for the last 12 months, inputs and outputs and being able to enable skills and tools, we've got now MCP agents, and recently announced was Microsoft's adoption or support for the A2A protocol as well. So they're doubling down on this. I'm seeing it in a lot of the tools. I'm seeing agents kind of being surfaced up, in the Microsoft ecosystem. So start investing, like Mac said, in MCP specifically. But if you're interested in the A2A, it's certainly an open protocol that is worth looking into it. So Mac, you want to explain a little bit how agents work?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to hit, I don't know if we added. why can't we can't see the whole thing? But effectively, the way that that agents work, there you go. Thank you. I think we made some changes to this, and I didn't notice. The way that agents at a high level work is a user will prompt an AI agent something, and ultimately that'll execute a model. And that model now, in a lot of fashion, will be available to us in Azure AI Foundry. And those models, those agents, will have tools that are exposed to them. Tools are things like MCP servers or agents, or your Azure functions that are running on an MCP server. And the beautiful thing, and I was so totally blown away by this, contextually by using by using embeddings, your agent will know which tool to use based on the prompt that you specify for your agent. And so effectively from a if we go back to the idea of Azure functions, when you create an Azure function as an MCP server, ultimately you specify the kind of prompt in an embedded fashion that you would like for that function to follow. And the agent, based on the prompt that it received, will know that, hey, I got this prompt. It uses the embeddings model to determine that, hey, in this scenario, it is best to use this agent or this tool to get you the right answer. So the user prompts the agent determines what model to use, and ultimately you get a response back. The tools are where the bread and butter is, where you can integrate all those things like APIs, like web servers. All this stuff is available now at your fingertips. So there's a lot of uh, cool opportunities there.
So the announcement of the Foundry agent service as well is, another layer to be able to connect the core pieces of AI Foundry, to the rest of your ecosystem. So development tools and all the different knowledge sources. So the other parts of this that are really great are the being able to connect to like the content safety, the observability, and we're going to get into some of the features of the observability in a little bit. But the Foundry agent service is what's going to help you manage that orchestration and manage all the network isolation and all that type of stuff. I also mentioned the A2A support. So here's just a quick little snippet, for A2A, how easy it is for you to be able to actually use it. So just a couple of, imports, and boom, you are off and running, and you've now implemented your A2A, compatible agent. We touched a little bit about, or Mac mentioned something about the Azure functions, and so we've got new capabilities for AI apps leveraging Azure functions. I think I've got a slide in here too, and this is going to be so chaotic because the two of us were just like going nuts on this. Mac, do you want to talk a little bit about what you saw with the functions?
Yeah, so in much the same fashion that Brian just showed you with A2A and how easy it is, effectively the way that Azure functions have adapted this is just as bindings. They're just decorators over your Azure function. And within one line of code, you can specify, hey, this Azure function should use this embeddings model to embed every message. And then ultimately another decorator that says, hey, turn this into an MCP server and use this prompt. It was absolutely amazing how easy they made it to integrate. But effectively, the long and short of it is they're extending the capabilities of AI apps within Azure Functions. Obviously, there's things that like semantic kernel that you could have played with already, but then these open AI triggers and bindings, that's a big step up to how easy they make it. And then obviously, we all love Azure Functions. They're not going to go away. So yeah.
Maybe I'll skip ahead really quick because the slide that I've got, like 26. We'll have to go back. This is so ad hoc because I did throw something in here. Mac talked about the bindings in here, and I just wanted to give you some examples of what that looks like. So These are the bindings that you can use as of today in the Azure OpenAI extension for Azure Functions. And so it's just basically decorations. What you're doing is you are teaching OpenAI what kinds of things you can do with it, with those Azure functions. They can be triggered directly from it. So do a text completion, have a trigger for, an assistant, messaging an assistant, reading text embeddings. All these things are triggers that are now supported within the Azure functions through the OpenAI extensions. Let's go back to where we were, because we got a lot. Yeah, we got like 50 slides, and we're like probably 50 minutes behind schedule already. So MCP Azure, function architecture, just a quick snapshot of what this looks like. Mac, did you want to talk anything more about it?
This will be just a very quick one, just a sample, right? You have an Azure function in here, and in the yellow boxes, you have your typical, getters or posts or whatever. That's your typical HTTP triggers. And then with the advent of these bindings and this other functionality, it's just another function. It becomes an MCP tool. And that MCP tool then is able to be surfaced to VS Code or any other things, or you're now able to add it into an existing agent through Azure AI Foundry. So it's just that easy. It's really not secret sauce, and that's what blew me away.
Speaking of how blown away I was, I remember NL Web coming up on like the build presentation. I was like, oh, that's interesting. What is this? What is this going to be? And so is it a thing? Is it not a thing? And I took a little bit closer look at it. And the best way I can explain it is that think of like RSS feeds, that are ubiquitous with anybody that's publishing content on a regular basis. The idea here is that NL Web is a protocol that sits on top of an MCP server. And right now it only supports one method, and it's basically ask. And so you can now interact with your website content like an RSS feed, through a common protocol, common interface. So it's really kind of a layer sitting on top of MCP server. Of an MCP server. And then the other functional aspect of this to call out is that if you think about RSS feeds as being, a semantic layer, a semantic context of like the information that's available on websites, whether it's your shopping portal or if it's your blog portal or whatever, it's kind of pre-built for, being able to ask natural language questions. So that's what it is. Is it going to be a thing? I don't know. I mean, is it going to replace RSS feeds? I don't know, but I think it's interesting. I think that it's something we'll have to pay attention to this year. Any thoughts on that, Mac?
No, when I first read it, when I first heard it, I was like, I'm not really sure that this is gonna get bought into it, but I guess we'll see. I'm in much the same boat as you are. But moving on with GitHub Copilot, the big one that I was feverishly typing during the keynote when I heard this, I was feverishly typing to coworkers and some of our clients. Agent Mode is now available in Visual Studio, and I got to use it. And I've been using Agent Mode in Visual Studio Code for months. I have a Visual Studio Code Insider, so a lot of this stuff is even fresher. It's not the same. Visual Studio and Agent Mode is not the same as Visual Studio Code Insiders. The other thing is SSMS 25, obviously now, which is an announcement in and of itself, has GitHub Copilot enabled as well. And that's a disparate experience. So all three of these IDs, code editors, all have disparate experiences for the most part. I really hope they're going to bring them all together so it's the same. And I really like Visual Studio Code the most. So we'll see this. And then Brian, you want to talk about application modernization?
Yeah, there was a slide during the keynote where they talked about doing like AS400 migrations, and that's what we're kind of talking about with the app modernization. So there are tools that are out there like your .NET Upgrade Assistant that have some Copilot features that are enabled in it. This is taking it to another level. This is basically incorporating agent mode into not only the discovery but the implementation of migrating your legacy code, whether it is in Java, AS400, .NET, doesn't really matter. That's what we're talking about here. I have a customer that is really interested in this. They've got a huge monolithic, application, millions of lines of code, and I specifically talked with this group about the app modernization. It's currently available in preview for Java right now, as it stands, and .NET's going to be released in a couple of weeks. The claim that they made to me, I said, "Well, give me an idea of how well this thing is going to work." And they have some examples of customers that are using it in the Java workloads. And it took what would normally be about a 3-week kind of process down to like 3 days. So think about that kind of scale in terms of being able to modernize your application. And we're not talking about like switching the entire framework. We're talking about being able to do not the minimal viable, but cloud readiness, being able to get your application up to snuff to be able to be hosted in the cloud. So fantastic tool. I can't wait to start playing with it. Around here, we don't have a ton of legacy applications, but our customers do, and so that'll be something to pay attention to. And then the next topic is like the SRE agent. So I got a couple of slides on that. We can talk through the SRE agent. We're talking about site reliability engineer, and I think last year at Build they announced Copilot in Azure, and it took weeks and weeks and maybe even months for us to be able to get access to Copilot in Azure. This is like the next level and the next level and the next level above that, in terms of what it's capable of doing. First and foremost, it can help you just answer questions about your ecosystem, like what are the resources being used, what are the types of resources that are being used, and you can see here in that chat, we're just making a pie chart of how this is. Now, are some of these things already built into the dashboards in Azure? Sure, but they're not in a way that you can really ask questions about it and maybe do like impromptu like filtering. So really cool tool. I know Max got a bunch of other thoughts on it, so I'll let him sort of dive into it as well.
Yeah, we can kind of skip over this first slide. The prompts are one thing. A lot of these questions are things that you can ask. The bottom line is continuously this agent, once deployed to your environment, continuously learns about your Azure resources. Quite possibly the most interesting thing I saw is the Azure SRE agent go through finding errors and then actually resolving them and doing even more. So what you see here on the left is the SRE agent is determining that an Azure Monitor alert was detected. It acknowledges that alert all within seconds, actually 1 second. And then and some of this stuff they were actually showing us live during the keynote, which was another amazing thing. And it wasn't in a recording or a screenshot like in a PowerPoint. But the SRE agent acknowledges the alert. It actually starts investigating, doing things, and determining and performing analysis on logs and all these other things, components to determine what went wrong. And in the next slide, what you'll see is it'll come to come back to you in some time and say, hey, this is what happened. This is what happened, and based on this, I think it's this or that. And then the next thing after that is it'll actually automatically resolve your problem. And so if in this scenario it was a bad deployment, it'll revert the swap and go back to the previous deployment. And then the next best thing, which I was actually blown away, again, seeing this live at the time, is that it created an issue related to this in GitHub so that a developer can pick it up and know that this happened, and then ultimately go further on it and determine what to do next. And then the beautiful part of this is you can then use GitHub Copilot, your peer programmer, to actually resolve the issue thereafter. So the Azure SRE agent totally blew my mind away. I think it's going to be hugely powerful to just ensuring that everything is up and running and is gravy.
That was some of the more jaw-dropping demonstrations where They were just assigning Copilot to the user story or to the bug, and it would go out and create a pull request in like 6 minutes, after thinking about it and refactoring the code. Absolutely fantastic. If you didn't get a chance to watch that live, go and take a look at some of the recordings around that or some of the sessions.
Absolutely.
Agent Factory. You want to talk a little bit about Agent Factory?
Yes. So Azure AI Foundry is a new, not entirely a new stack, but Microsoft is going all in on this stack of the Foundry models, the Foundry agents, and they're really thinking about how do we put everything AI into this Azure AI Foundry, and then also allow for proper observability and governance. Now, Microsoft is going headfirst into Azure AI Foundry. They're working with a tremendous load of partners. I think now we're up to 11,000 different models, all available at your fingertips within Azure AI Foundry. The one cool thing, yeah, actually, and we'll talk a little bit about those models here in a second. The one cool thing I liked that I took out of build, amongst other things, is actually this spectrum, and it shows you, what do you want to use based on your use case and your company for your problems. Now, it might be just a drag and drop UI and with Copilot Studio, but a lot of us will find ourselves in this PaaS place, right in the middle. And that's where Azure AI Foundry is monumental. There's over 80 million companies already. I'm sorry, 80,000 companies already using Azure AI Foundry. Um, and so if we go on to the next slide, we'll get a quick list of the types of models that we have available. One of the bigger announcements was the partnership with Hugging Face. So all of those models that are in Hugging Face will have available to us. And then there is also the bigger one. We had a chance to watch Elon speak, but Grok. So Grok and Grok 3 will all be available to us in Azure AI Foundry. So you can start to leverage all sorts of models, Grok and included inside of your agents.
Now, if you take a step back and sort of look at the picture holistically, MCP, not a Microsoft protocol. A to A, not a Microsoft protocol. Hugging Face, open source models. Grok, being able to partner with other companies in the ecosystem was a theme that I heard screaming loud and clear from Satya during the keynote. So this really to me was I had an opportunity to give some feedback to several of the different product owners, within Microsoft, not only just at the booths, but also like in some private like feedback sessions. And I gave them hats off to that openness in the ecosystem. But more importantly, what are they going to do to support that, that openness as well? And we're going to get to some of the security features in a little bit. But I think it's it's important to just pause and reflect on that and say that whether just whatever ecosystem is out there, Microsoft is willing to play nicely in that sandbox right now. Model router, Mac, you said to me this morning, oh man, I can't believe I forgot about that. I thought this was super cool. And did you want to give some thoughts? I've got some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, so initially my thoughts were this kind of simplifies a lot. If you're trying to be somewhat cost effective, the model router effectively is something that determines what model to best use, which in Azure AI Foundry, which will ultimately be cost effective for you and also fast. So as you can see in this graphic on the right, we're asking it a simple question of what's 2 plus 2. And based on that, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to use GPT-4 Nano, small, lightweight model, just get a quick answer. But then if you give it something a little bit more complex, it determines that no, 4.1 Nano, probably not powerful enough. I'm going to need the 04 mini. This model router is an automagic ability for you to just pick whatever model you need, even though you may not know what model to choose. And that's crazy powerful, largely because even when I use Visual, or GitHub Copilot, I sometimes ask it the same question and use different models to see what I could use it for best. This takes that away. It's a huge time saver, and it also is a money saver to some degree. But yeah, Brian, thoughts?
Yeah, stacking onto that, you hit the nail on the head around the cost optimization. So most of my customers are really concerned about building in AI and AI Foundry and trying to calculate what the tokens are going to cost when you open it up on a website that has, 50,000, 100,000, a million visitors a day. Those tokens start to add up really, really quickly. And so having the model router be able to, discern between different types of requests and find the optimal path, from a cost optimization standpoint, is really, really important to how we're going to be developing these. The other thing that really sticks out to me too is that it's multimodal. So it's not just text that you can send to this to the model router, but it gives you the ability to include images and stuff like that so that it'll pick up what, that aspect of the routing as well. So very cool feature. Looking forward to incorporating this into a lot of our solutions. And the agent service, enabling trust, choice, and tools. Mac, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll close it up and then we'll move on to Local Foundry. I know you really want to talk about that. So with Azure AI Foundry Agent Service, effectively there's three things in mind that you can see, and I really like this graphic. There's a lot of elements of bring your own, right? So you could bring your own file storage, your own search index. Pretty soon we're going to be able to integrate our VNets. Another cool announcement in this kind of general space is that agents are going to get their own Entra objects. So you're going to identify an agent with an Entra, and it's going to allow us a whole new space of permissions and just security, but also usability. So we're not losing trust and security by using Azure AI Foundry. That's a big one. The next one is choice. 11,000 actually over 11,000 models available to us at our fingertips that we can with with a button click already enable. And then probably the most important, well, I can't say most important because security is important too, but one of the most important ones, I can't pick one, is just the interfacing, right? So Azure AI Foundry makes it extremely easy for us to interface our models and our agents with Fabric, with Azure functions like we talked already. I mean, SharePoint, you name it, probably supported. And if it's not yet, it will be in very short amount of time. A lot of companies are using MCP to integrate with these with Azure AI Foundry, well, or at least at the very minimum, since it's already integrated. So it's a huge selling point. And those three pillars are pretty fundamental.
Yeah, we did this slide already, so we'll skip past that. All right, so Local Foundry. I was pretty pumped when I saw this, and I got even more pumped when I got to play with it at Build and then ask the team some questions around it. I'm so pumped about it. I'm actually gonna try and do a demo of this really quick. So here's a quick little link. Quick little link up at the top. AKAMS Foundry Local Quick Start. So that's going to give you kind of a walkthrough, but I'll give you the 30-second tour of that. So let me share. Another window. Here is just PowerShell. So in order to get started, I've got just a couple of commands I'm going to run through here. I'm going to run a win-get command to install Local Foundry. Thankfully, I've done this already, so it's going to look for some versioning, make sure that it's good. But really simple command there. And then the next command I'm going to run is basically running the Foundry with a model, and I'm specifying which model I want to run. In this particular case, I'm going to run Phi 3.5 mini. And that's about a 2.2 gig model. So thankfully, I've also downloaded that, and I don't really have to wait too long for it to go. And then boom, Foundry is open and running now locally, and I can go ahead and type something. So what is the difference between MCP and the A2A? And it is now answering that question pretty verbosely, and this is all running locally on my workstation right now. It's using my CPU and my NPU, and it's not necessarily really pegging things out that bad. So let me switch sharing here again. And I got to do this like super quick. But if you can see this really quick, you're seeing the CPU utilization did spike a little bit. Memory was pretty unaffected. I had some internet stuff going on, but my NPU even got nagged a little bit. But it didn't crush my computer running these models locally. So I think that like just being able to do that in just a few seconds was pretty cool. And let's go back into the rest of the presentation. There, I did a demo live, and you all got to see it without me embarrassing myself. So let's resume. Other thing to say about that is that this is being brought to both Mac and Windows. So AI Foundry, or the Local Foundry, is going to be available whether you're a Mac developer or if you're a Windows developer as well. So why is this important? To me, here's the biggest thing about it is that if I can run these models locally, I am not hitting round trips to Azure AI Service. I am not paying for tokens. I am not doing any of that kind of stuff. So if you want to have a cost-effective solution and have that running in a container, if you want to have that running, on a local server or an edge device, this opens up the door for you to be able to do that pretty efficiently and without a lot of horsepower that's going to go behind it. So I'm excited about it. Mac, did you have any other thoughts?
No, my main one was in conversations with you was actually the cost effectiveness of this. So I remember I was walking up to, I got together with Brian again at Build, and I see him at his laptop at a table at Build. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He was doing just this. But what comes to mind is just the scalability of it, and then ultimately being able to bring this home, bring this to your company, bring this on site, and start. I actually have a general good feeling that this is going to get adopted by a lot of companies, and we're going to see a lot more effort around this and from Microsoft.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cost of GPUs, starting to drop pretty rapidly. And so being able to run even bigger models than, something like a 3.5 mini is going to be, efficient and effective as well.
Yeah.
So let's pause here for a second, kind of bring it all together, right? So we've got MCP, we've got local AI, and we have these frameworks now that that help us orchestrate all this, all being delivered on a local device. And so building solutions that aren't going to rely on these software as a service or products like OpenAI Foundry or AI Foundry, I think is really important as people start to adopt these agentic patterns and workflows, going forward. Couple of things that are coming in the Windows ecosystem. So in MCP registry within the Windows operating system, and actual MCP servers for Windows, allowing you being able to use SDKs to interact with different components of the operating system. Those are in private preview, and they weren't really sharing a lot of demos or information about it at Build, but that's kind of the direction where some of the stuff is going, being able to do device local development. So let's talk a little bit about safety. This is super important topic, and most of my conversations with CIOs, CTOs, CEOs talk about safety. First and foremost, can we use it? What should we use? What are the guardrails? Some really cool things came out at Build that help with not just like the four walls of my tenant, making sure that my data is secure, but how can I test it? How can I be sure that this is working? And there's a bunch of different ways that you want to test your AI agents and your AI applications. All the way from the development to the endpoints when you've deployed it. And red teaming, AI is a thing that hasn't really been matured over the last 24 months or so, or 36 months since we've all been using OpenAI. And now that actually is being released. And Mac, you and I hung out with the red teaming team for a little bit. I spent, I think, more time with them the day before. But what this is just like you would do a penetration test on any application that you might have built. You would get a third-party service to kind of evaluate it. This is directly addressing your AI that's being enabled in the application. So it's going to look at prompt attacks. It's going to look at all sorts of different components, and it's super easy to get spun up. There's some agent libraries that you can leverage to get it up and running, and run automated scans to pick up things like content safety or injection attacks or jailbreaking. All that stuff is already built into their red team agent. Anything else that jumped out at you, Mac, when you were talking to him?
Yeah, one thing that jumped out to me was the ability to integrate some of these tests, these red team tests, but then also there was just general content safety tests into pipelines. So
Yep.
you're able to take a lot of these um, uh, tests and integrate them to your deployment as your agents being deployed. That's huge for just ensuring that everything is gravy from day over day. So that would be one of the thoughts that I had. There's also some libraries that both for Python. I know for Python, I got to actually play with it. We were able to implement some specific tests using this Python library for agents. There is that's out where you're able to just, it's almost like unit testing your agent, which I liked. But they're just building a lot more and more. I know that it used to be a kind of a forethought and or not a forethought, and now it's more of an afterthought. But I think we're definitely catching up.
And so that's red teaming, and that is, Mac, you sort of touched on it, something you'll be able to integrate into your DevOps pipeline. But there's also the Microsoft Purview aspect of things as well. So Microsoft Purview has got a few features that are not only looking at your data ecosystem or your corporate ecosystem, but as also incorporated into AI Foundry as well. So some of the things you can do around content safety would be spotlighting to detect like injection attacks in real time, and not only detect them, but set up alerts and sort of control like different thresholds for if it's a self-harm or if it's a violent, type of interaction. So spotlighting is coming. Mac, you mentioned the agent ID. So this is something that, we're starting to see. I started to see it a little bit with the Copilot Studio agents and people just building, a plethora of agents in their ecosystem. I think back to like a couple of years ago when the Power Platform Center of Excellence, was starting to be adopted by a lot of organizations with the agent sprawl, and you had the same thing happening in all these different Copilot Studio agents or custom agents that are being built, and so that sprawl needs to be managed, and those agent identities are going to be important for us to keep tabs on as well. Anything else to add there?
No, you pretty much hit the nail on the head, and I kind of got ahead of you earlier.
Yeah, you did a little bit. But all right, so we talked a little bit about the risk monitoring and alerts. So here in Purview, you're in AI Foundry, you're going to be able to, set up different risk criteria and have those notify alerts. So a jailbreak attempt was, on your AI model deployment was detected by prompt shields. And then you can, assign different risk levels to that and take actions against it. We got 15 minutes left, so think we're doing relatively okay on this. Another thing that I thought was really cool was the sensitivity labels from Purview. So for those that may not be, kind of like familiar with that or whatever, but with Microsoft Purview, you get the ability to, automatically detect and tag content within your documents. And so a natural inclination is to create these agents around, different content types. And so a paradigm, comes up where I have this privileged document that may be tagged as confidential, maybe tagged as PHI, some sort of sensitivity label has been applied to that document, but I've exposed that document in a RAG, some sort of a RAG pipeline, maybe through Copilot Studio. And so by leveraging Purview, you're going to be able to take that sensitivity label, and it bubbles up with the content that's being served up by the agent. And so, it would prevent users from being able to, copy and paste the AI content, which might have sensitive organization information, into an email or into a chat. So this was really cool. I have not seen it work in person and be able to play with it and see what you can and can't do. But I did see some demos, not only in the keynote, but, also working with the Purview team. We dove into this a little bit, but it's super great to see this feature. It's going to make a lot of our customers more comfortable using agents. All right, so Mac, I think we talked with the Power Platform, the guy who created this, right? This was his job, and I don't remember seeing an announcement about it. In build, and we had some questions, around sprawl and governance, and different things. He's like, "Hey, have you checked this out?" Mac, you actually saw it before. Like you were just in the Power
Yeah,
Platform like the day before and saw it.
absolutely. So we were at, first day of build. I ended up having to do something for a client on that day as well. So I got into Power Platform, and I look. I'm like, there's a switch. I'm like, new Power Platform Admin Center. I'm like, okay, well, let's click and see what happens. So I got to look at it pretty quickly. No, they never announced it, not at least not loudly. If not for that button and if not for that conversation, we probably wouldn't really heard much about it. But it's not just the Power Platform Admin Center that's getting a facelift. It's everything. I mean, it's Power Apps got an entirely new UI, and a few others. But the huge observability gains around Power Platform Admin Center is huge. And then we got to talking with the product owner that you mentioned, and they're actually putting in a lot of changes. I think there's 5 pillars that they're focusing on
Yep.
within Power Platform. And there's going to be just a lot of incoming changes around how you look at Power Platform. So there's going to be managed platforms. So we have managed solutions, managed environments, and now there's going to be entirely managed platforms. So they're adding on new stuff and adding on new language, to confuse us a little bit more, but then also give us more ability to do other things.
Yeah, thing that really jumped out at me, with this announcement and playing with the tool when we got back here in town was that, Copilot Studio, it was sort of like this like stepchild of the Power Platform. It had a whole different URL, different management console that you went to. And now it's kind of been brought into the Power Platform Admin Center. And I always thought it was weird for it to be really disconnected, because the nature of using Copilot agents isn't just about doing things like answering questions about documents. It's about performing actions as well, and having to hop back and forth between, Power Automate and Power Apps and Copilot Studio, not just from a development standpoint, but from like a governance picture and being able to understand that. To me was a little bit disjointed, and I'm glad to see that they brought it all together as part of the Power Platform. Other things you can see here on the graph that's on that page is, they've changed the Copilot Studio licensing, and so what is happening, with my messages? What am I doing for, how am I trending for consumption? We're no longer just fixated on a $200 a month Copilot Studio license for the organization. They're going to like a pure consumption model, so you can have as many agents as you want. And then they just accrue messages or tokens, if you want to think of it in that nature. And so being able to like go and take a look at those metrics within the dashboard is important as well. We got a lot to go through yet. So multi-agent orchestration, I think this is like super cool, in the Power Platform, being able to support, that multi-agent orchestration. You can now connect in Copilot Studio, you'll be able to connect to other agents that you've created. So you can specialize the skills and have reusability around that, and build, more and more complex, agent frameworks and agent patterns. Another announcement or another thing that I walked through was I'm doing a talk later tonight. Anybody in Milwaukee wants to come, talk about this. But having the Copilot, functionality built into the developer skill set is allowing you to take business requirements and directly translate those into agentic solutions. And so you don't need to be a developer or a Power Platform developer, even necessarily understand how to build these flows. All you really need to do is design really good business requirements, and you can build agentic solutions out of that. A lot of features are coming out that are going to make it fun to play with. There's plans. That is, it's not just building a plan, but it's a thing in Power Apps that just became generally available. And so you can do end-to-end solution building just by creating kind of a plan in the Power Platform. Agent feeds, Mac, you touched a little bit on the managed platform. Being able to expand the governance and security aspects of these solutions as we're starting to build them.
There's one tidbit, if you don't mind, before we go
Yeah.
too far, about multi-agent or about multi-agents. I had a chance to spend time in a lab where we effectively built a multi-agent with semantic kernel. So semantic kernel, the framework is, and if you're more interested in the high code, the semantic kernel is adopting some of the nuances of autogen, where depending on whether your model is deterministic or not, and if it is deterministic, you can actually start to employ specific orchestration patterns, all that are, and it's kind of it's pretty easy to choose. Hey, you want to use sequential or concurrent or magentic. It's basically an enum, and ultimately you can use semantic kernel to drive your deterministic multi-agent implementation. That's super powerful. So we got to do this in the lab, and then I got out of the lab. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna redo this client's, that client's, and that other client's entire implementation, because now I can use this. So these multi-agents, especially with this kind of autogen feel, is pretty cool to see.
So yeah, absolutely. And Mac, you can attest to the fact that a lot of the solutions that I'm bringing to our customers are using low code for, things like a user interface, but we still need some of the high code type of workloads, to be able to support some of the advanced reasoning that we're doing, or the advanced pattern matching or different types of models. So we've got two different aspects. First off, now I can bring pro code inside of my low code environment and develop things like, Python script to be able to do a plotting, something very specific that's not supported in the platform. Or if I'm from the other direction, I can use my Visual Studio environment to develop more complex Copilot Studio agents and deploy those into the Copilot ecosystem, giving advanced capabilities that I'm more comfortable as a developer developing in, and still have a tool that is supported in the Copilot Studio ecosystem. So a lot of synergies between the pro code and the low code environment. And I think that is, that's just going to make us a better organization. Model support and Power Platform. I'm just going to blow through this stuff, Mac, because we only have 6 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we stay here on time. I promised 59 minutes. Model support and Power Platform. So being able to fine tune your models and use task-specific models. So a couple of different concepts here. You're going to be able to fine-tune towards documents that you have. Maybe you have a legal analyzer and you want it to answer in certain ways. So you can build task-specific models and select from there. But you can also bring your models in from Azure, from the AI Foundry as well, and leverage it that way. Cool interfaces to be able to customize your model for your task, making it really simple for you to use. Let's see, databases in Fabric. So I know this is a little weird looking slide. There's just a big bunch of white space. Foundry connection for Azure for Cosmos DB. I thought this was really cool. Cosmos DB, very AI centric, RAG centric, kind of concept. Bringing that into Fabric ecosystem. I actually talked to the Cosmos people about why I would want to use this versus just deploying Cosmos directly. And there's a couple things you'd want to consider. Performance is one of them, cost is another. The biggest difference between the cost aspect of it is going to be in Cosmos DB, you pay for RUs, essentially, resource units, and in Fabric, you use capacity units. And I don't know that there's a real equation there that matches up, specifically to it. But if you're paying for capacity units in Fabric, you don't have to worry about the RUs in Cosmos DB. So that's probably the biggest reason why you use it one way or the other. SQL Server 2025 was announced. It's getting a step up in being able to support the AI workloads. You not only have, vector column types, but you've got these new functions that you can use within SQL Server 2025. And then Postgres, Mac, I'm going to let you speak on this for a second because we got into an argument, and I think you won at the end of the day. So talk about Postgres.
Yeah, we have 2 minutes, but it's probably going to consume a lot of it. But Postgres, there is a lot with the plugins, the extensibility of Postgres. There's just a ton of more things that you can do with it in the space of vectors and all that. I got to deploy an entire application using Postgres during a lab as well, so that was really great. It's really easy to connect to Azure using Postgres from the database directly. So there's a lot of opportunities there. It's cheaper. So it's cheaper because it's not being licensed as a Microsoft SQL server, but you also lose a lot. You lose some performance monitoring, and just in general that is no longer taken care of for you because you're kind of on your own. But there's other answers to that. So I've seen a lot of cool things happen in the AI space using Postgres, and I actually I'm probably going to be leaning as a proponent of that over SQL Server, most likely.
It supports support for RAG systems and LLM, type of workloads. Being a structured database versus a NoSQL database, I think, is important. And one of my biggest challenges with recommending Postgres was the cost of it in Azure. And I'm not going to plug anybody's names, but we ran into a Microsoft partner that has a really low cost deployment mechanism. So maybe talk to us, reach out to us a little bit later on that. I'm going to skip the next couple of slides because where they ended, I thought was really cool. And Microsoft Discovery. So I remember them talking about Researcher and Discovery and some of the other Copilot features that were coming out. Discovery was a really cool one. They talked about developing or actually having Copilot go out and research and develop a new chemical compound. What was it for cooling? You know this. It was cooling your race cars, right? So how do you find this stuff? The phase 2 rollout of Researcher was announced at Build, and I guess we're in phase 2 because I found it. And so for those of you that are wondering if you have it, if you have a Copilot license for the organization, go to Add New Agents and click on the Built by Microsoft, and you'll see some of those frontier Copilot agents that are available to you. So that's how I was able to find Researcher. For reference, I do have the ChatGPT deep research and the pro license and whatever else, and I love it. I always felt that like Microsoft needed to get me into the game, so I stopped trying to use other tools. I actually am pretty happy with the Researcher right now, and I think it's a fantastic tool. The other thing that I did not mention and thought was really interesting, speaking of Researcher and OpenAI and my pro licensing, Purview is going to be able to support content safety across other ecosystems as well. So if you do have a ChatGPT enterprise license, you can get covered under your Purview licensing as well with that. So with that said, next steps. If you want to learn a little bit more, talk to us in a little bit more detail, have a one-on-one, reach out to us. We're going to send out a survey here at the end of this. We're happy to talk more about this. We love this. AI at work, Azure, business apps, security, anything. And thanks for your time. Loved it. We made it.
Nice job.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Click the link.